Hi, Math 2. This is a review of our Unit 6, Lesson 6 through 8. So as a reminder, Unit 6 was about circles. So let's start there. So in this first question, one of the skills we learned to do when we were working with circles is we learned to write perfect square trinomials, which were perfectly factorable into a binomial squared. And so that's what we're being asked to do in the first problem. So I'm going to do two of these with you, and I'm going to let you do the other two on your own. And you can check your answers in the locker or in Google Classroom, and you can bring those to our Zoom class if you have any questions. So let's do A and let's do C together, and I'll leave, we'll call this one B and we'll call the fourth one D, and you can do those two on your own. So as a reminder, in order to write a perfect square trinomial, to find our C term, I would take my B term and divide by 2 and square it. So remember, my C term was equal to B divided by 2 squared. So let's do that in this first one. That would be negative 22 divided by 2 squared. That would be negative 11 squared, and that's 121. So 121 is the number that makes my perfect square trinomial, and I can factor that. So this is factorable into a binomial squared, and so that binomial squared would be x minus 11, and I can get that answer two different ways. One way, the first way we looked at it, the square root of the first term is x, and that's my first part of my binomial. The square root of my third term is 11. That's the last part of my binomial. And the sign in the middle is negative, and that's the sign in my binomial. The last thing we learned last week is this number that's in the middle step when I complete the square. That's the number that goes into my parentheses squared. If you're worried that you have the right answer, you always could add out to the side, create your x minus 11 squared, and multiply that with box method or FOIL. And when you do that, x times x is x squared, negative 11 times x is negative 11x, and negative 11 times negative 11 is 121. That gives me x squared minus 22x plus 121. So I can see that my trinomial is equal to x minus 11 squared. So let's take a look at C. C is an odd number for B. That creates either a fraction or a decimal. And so you could do the problem either way. I'm going to do it as a decimal. So my B divided by 2 is 7 divided by 2 squared. That's 3.5 squared, and that equals 12.25. So 12.25 is the number that creates my perfect square trinomial. And I can write that as a binomial squared. It's equal to x plus 3.5 squared. So let's take a look at 2a. In 2a, it says the equation of a circle is given by x minus 4 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 36. It says apply the distributive property to the squared binomials and rearrange it so that one side's equal to 0. In other words, we did a practice problem like this. We want to multiply this out. So we're going to use either box or FOIL, depending on which one you like to use. So I'm going to multiply out my x minus 4 squared. I'm going to multiply out my y plus 2 squared. And then I'm going to get everything equal to 0. So let's begin. I'm going to use box to do my x minus 4. So I have x minus 4 across the top of my box and x and minus 4 down the side of my box. And it's a 2 by 2 box because I'm multiplying two things by two things. X times x is my x squared, and negative 4 times x would give me negative 4x. Another negative 4 times x would give me another negative 4x. And finally, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. My like terms are on my diagonal, and I get x squared minus 8x plus 16. So in my problem, where I have x minus 4 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals 36, I know that my x minus 4 squared term is equal to x squared minus 8x plus 16. So now let's do my y plus 2 term. So again, out to the side, I have y plus 2 times y plus 2. This time I'll use FOIL for my students that are using FOIL, but box and FOIL will get me the same answer. So if I did FOIL, FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. So my first two terms is y times y, or y squared. My inner terms are 2 times y, or 2y. My outer terms is 2 times y, or 2y, and my last terms are 2 times 2, which is 4. So I get y squared plus 4y plus 4 for my answer. So going back to my problem, I know that my y plus 2 squared is equal to y squared plus 4y plus 4 equals my 36. So I've multiplied everything out. So now the last part I need to do is the part where I get one side equal to 0. So right now I have a 16 and a 4, which I could combine. So when I do that, I still have an x squared, I still have a minus 8, I still have a y squared, I still have a 4y, and 16 plus 4 gives me a 20, equals 36. My very last step to get this equal to 0 is to move the 36. So I'm going to subtract 36 from both sides. When I do that, I'll be moving the 36 over to the left side. So x squared minus 8x plus y squared plus 4y, and 20 minus my 36 is negative 16, would be equal to 0. So why don't you guys try to be on your own and check your answers in the locker, and if you have any questions, bring them to Zoom. So let's take a look at number 3. In problem 3, it asks me to find the center and radius of the following circles and then sketch the circle. So in this problem, this is where my step 1 is to group the x terms together and leave a space. So when I do step 1, I get x squared plus 8x and I leave a space. And then I group the y terms, y squared minus 10y, and I leave a space. And then I move my constants to the other side. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So my negative 5 then cancels on the left, and I get positive 5 on the right side of my equation. So my next step is where I complete the square. I try to figure out my c term in order to create my perfect square trinomial. So let's do my 8 divided by 2 squared. That's my b divided by 2 squared. So that's 4 squared, that's 16. So I'm going to add 16 to create my perfect square trinomial. I'm going to do the same thing for my y terms. So I'm going to take my b, which is negative 10, and I'm going to divide by 2 and square it. I get negative 5 squared, which is 25. So I'm going to add 25. Now in algebra, I'm not allowed to just add 16 and add 25 to my equation. I am not keeping my equation balanced. So this was step 3 in our lesson. On step 3, I balanced my equation. Since I added a 16 and I added a 25 to the left side, I'm also going to add a 16. I'm going to add a 25 to my right side. And now I'm going to clean everything up. So in the next step, I'm going to write my x squared plus 8x plus 16 as a binomial squared, and that would be x plus 4 squared plus, and now I'm going to write my y squared minus 10y plus 25. That would be y minus 5 squared equals, and now I have 30, 5 plus 25 is 30, and 30 plus 16 would be 46. So this is the equation of my circle in that form that I recognize. My form is my x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals my radius squared. So from this, I can get my center and I can get my radius. So the center of my circle would be negative 4, positive 5. Remember, you have to think the opposite about what you see in parentheses. So this would be the center of my circle. And then the radius would be the square root of 46. The square root of 46 is a great answer, or if you take the square root of 46, you get approximately 6.8 or 6.78. And then it asked me to sketch my circle. So I'm going to try sketching this circle. So if I draw a little XY axis out to the right, you'll notice that my center is negative 4, 5. So over negative 4, up positive 5. And I have my center. And then my radius is around 6.8. That's almost 7, but not quite. So if I was on graph paper, I would count up almost 7 to the left, to the right, to the up and down. And then I would get 4 more points. So up almost 7, right almost 7, left almost 7, down almost 7. And then I would draw in a sketch of my circle, and I went off my drawing screen, but you guys could pencil that in for me. You can try B on your own and check your answers in the locker. So now let's continue with lessons 7 and 8. In lessons 7 and 8, these were the lessons that we were working with a parabola, and we had a new equation. When we were working with a parabola, we worked with the equation x minus a squared plus y minus b squared equals y minus k squared, where AB was my focus and K was my directrix. This is also on our formula sheet, by the way. I would print the formula sheet or write it on my own sheet of paper, so I had the formula sheet handy, not only when you do these problems, but also for the quiz. So let's take a look at 4a. Write the equation of the parabola with a focus negative 2, 7 and a directrix of y equals 3. So my negative 2, 7 is my AB, and my 3 is my directrix, that's my K. So then the equation, if I plug in my values, would be x minus a negative 2, that's x plus 2 squared, plus y minus a 7 squared equals y minus 3 squared. And I'm done. If I've been asked to write the equation of a parabola, that is an equation of a parabola with a focus negative 2, 7 and directrix y equals 3. So you can try 4b on your own. So let's take a look at number 5. Number 5 says a parabola is defined as a set of points all the same distance from 5, 1, this is my focus, 5, 1 is my focus, and the line y equals 3, that would be my directrix. So in this problem, it says calculate and select all the points that are on the parabola, show work in the space provided, and make a sketch of the parabola. So 2 things, I'm going to go ahead and sketch the parabola first. So I've got this parabola. My focus is at 5, 1, so over 5, up 1, so my focus is here. My directrix is the line y equals 3. That is a horizontal line that goes through y equals 3 on the y-axis. So I learned in our lesson that my vertex was halfway in between the focus and the directrix. So then I know my vertex would be in between 5, 1, and this line y equals 3. So halfway in between is 5, 2. So I know my vertex is at 5, 2. I also learned, and this is in lesson 7, activity 2, I learned when my directrix was above my focus that my parabola points down. So this is a rough sketch. I don't really know where my parabola crosses the x-axis, and I don't really know where my parabola crosses the y-axis. I'm just sketching it in. So I know my parabola is upside down, it points downwards, and I know my vertex is at 5, 2. So this problem asks me if several points are on my parabola. There's 2 different ways to do this problem. You could do this problem with distances and using the distance formula. So you could use distances using the distance formula, or you could use the equation and you could substitute in the points to see if it makes the equation true. The distances method I did in the 2 videos last week. You saw me use the distance formula to calculate the distance from the focus and the directrix. I also believe I did it that way in the video for the practice. So today in this, I'm going to use the equation method. That's the same method I used in our Zoom last Thursday and Friday, just so you can go ahead and use whichever method you seem to like better. But in order to use the equation method, I have to write the equation. So again, I'm given the focus and I'm given the directrix. So I know the equation of my parabola would be x minus 5 squared, that's my A, plus y minus 1 squared, that's my B, equals y minus k squared, y minus 3. Sorry about that. Can I pencil in a 3 there? Y minus 3 squared. Let me go ahead and get my eraser. Sorry about that. And let me go back and get the pen working. So that would be y minus 3 squared. That's the equation of my parabola. If a point is on it, it's going to make that equation true. So let's go do number 1. Let's see if 1, negative 2 is on this parabola. So I'm going to plug a 1 in for my x and a negative 2 in for my y into my equation. So I plug a 1 in for my x, so it's 1 minus 5 squared, plus I'm going to plug a negative 2 in for y, negative 2 minus 1 squared, equals, now this is a question mark. I don't really know if it's going to be equal. That's what I'm trying to see. I'm going to plug a negative 2 in for y again. So negative 2 minus 3 squared. So 1 minus 5 would be a negative 4 squared. To that, I'm going to add negative 3 squared. And I'm going to see, question mark above the equal sign, if that's equal to negative 5 squared. So it looks like negative 4 squared would be negative 4 times negative 4. As a reminder, that is positive 16. So 16 plus 9, I'm trying to see if that is indeed equal to 5 squared, which is 25. That is 25. So I have got 25 equals 25 for my answer. So then, yes, I know 1 comma negative 2 is on my parabola. If I would have got, for instance, 30 equals 25, then no, that point would not be on my parabola. So why don't you try B, C, and D on your own and check your answers in the locker or in Google Classroom and bring any questions that you have to our Zoom session Tuesday and Wednesday. So you can finish this up for your homework. Thank you.